Hello, everyone. Ryan Rodriguez here again with another episode of Konnecting Keelhaulers. Today, we are joined by Elijah Jackowitz, the GSMA class of 2016. Elijah, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to share some of your experiences in your career as well as when you were at Maritime.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Elijah currently serves in the U.S. Navy, where he has been since October of 2018, serving as a service warfare officer with a lieutenant junior grade rank stationed in the Hawaiian Islands at Pearl Harbor right now. Prior to enlisting, Elijah worked as a shipping agent with Norton Lilly International, working out of the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. So, Elijah, I think we'll start first with what you're currently doing. So, you had a few years in between graduating and then enlisting in the Navy. So, what made you enlist, and then what do you do now as a service warfare officer?
Yeah, so my thought process, I was interested in going into the military even in college, but I was looking at a lot of different options. There's so many things available to students there. There's so many job opportunities. So I was open to a lot of things. And I initially took the job with Norton Lilly to go down to Long Beach and had a great time down there, just kind of as an entry-level job to see what would happen. But I quickly realized that I was still interested in doing the military thing. So discussed with the recruiter the different options. I also wanted to get some time sailing under my belt. There's definitely a bias towards folks that get actually see time in the maritime industry, in my opinion. So I thought it'd be a good thing to get some under my belt. Obviously, I had the college degree, so I went the officer route. And I was fortunate enough to get stationed out here in Pearl Harbor. There's a lot of places the Navy can put you. And,
Yeah, Hawaii's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Cool. So now, so kind of like, what's your role as a service warfare officer? What are you kind of doing role wise, day-to-day work and things of that nature?
Yeah, so it changes. When you initially get into the service warfare, the SWO community, your job is to get qualified, get advanced qualifications in engineering, ship driving, combat systems, those kinds of things. I'm still in that qualification process. I'm wrapping up here shortly. It should be done in the next month or so. But generally, that's about a 2-year process. Through that, you have multiple different jobs at the command. So in the time I've been on board, I was the Combat Information Center officer, responsible for the guys running basically the tactical side. I spent the majority of my time as first lieutenant, which I currently am now, responsible for air operations, search and rescue, deck seamanship, a lot of the actual just the ship operations throughout the day. I work for the operations officer, and while I have about a year left on this assignment or this tour, and I'm going to move over to engineering for the last part. So it changes. You know, some folks spend their entire time, their entire tour in one job. I've been fortunate enough to do 3 different jobs. In addition, as a collateral, I'm a rescue swimmer. So that was something that I was really blessed to get the opportunity to do. Just came down to being in the right place at the right time and being in shape when they needed the guy. I had that opportunity.
Nice. So with you, you're kind of saying you've done a couple different jobs in this role, and other people stick in one. Is that based off preference? Is it based off of kind of just need, and then who takes the opportunity when it arises, or kind of how does that go?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Every command does it differently. The overarching goal for most commands is to get the most experience kind of packed into that first tour as possible for a junior officer. That's pretty common to move around quite a bit.
Gotcha.
3 different jobs in your first assignment. That's probably on the high end. Most folks would do at least 2. I have heard of commands that actually do more than that, which there's pros and cons to move around that much. You're constantly learning new things, which is great. You're getting a lot of experience in a short amount of time. It's also challenging because you're constantly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm not an engineer in global studies.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and we'll actually talk a little bit about that. Like, man, you're doing some different things for sure outside of your major. For sure.
This ties into, for folks that are maybe possibly interested in going the officer route, it's much more a management position, a planning position, than an actual hands-on. I won't be turning wrenches, changing out oil, doing anything hands-on. The engineers are doing it on a day-to-day basis. But being involved in the engineering department, is a lot of exposure to systems that I'm not familiar with. So
Yep.
it's gonna be a strict learning curve.
Gotcha. So almost kind of sounds like, in just thinking like shoreside engineering stuff, like project management type stuff, where it's like you know a bunch of, or a lot of a bunch of different things, but you're not the actual expert in going in and doing. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. So now just like let's talking about Norton Lilly a little bit before you got into the Navy, and I know they're a good partner with Cal Maritime and stuff. So how was your process to get hired there? And then what were you doing as a ship agent? And, you know, I know Port of LA and Port of Long Beach are right next to each other, but were there any differences in working kind of with either ports? Did you have to know like maybe specific things for each one and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, first off, I can't say enough good things about Norton Lilly. That was just a really, really great time of life. I loved working there, and I really loved living down in Long Beach. The hiring process was actually funny. I initially walked out of Cal Maritime in December of 2016, and I didn't have a job offer. There were a couple things I was looking at, a couple things in the works, but at the time I did not have something finalized. A couple months later, I was talking to Eric Cooper. Actually, I was on campus, and he said, you know, what's going on? And we were chatting, and he said, hey, are you interested in being a shipping agent with Norton Lilly? So I think they had reached out to him. So that was initially how I got in touch. Went through an interview process, actually interviewed with a former Cal Maritime guy up in Oakland. It worked out there, went down to Southern California, interviewed again at the Long Beach office, and I was offered the job shortly after. As far as what you do on a day-to-day basis as a shipping agent, you're essentially the point of contact for ship operations while it's in port. You're not dealing so much with the cargo side, but more the services for the ship, refueling, changing out the crew, that kind of thing. The other side to it is the customs side of it. So you're preparing a lot of the admin, taking care of the documentation, the paperwork, and making sure everything's in order for that ship to legally be there and conduct operations. The difference between working in LA and Long Beach, not much.
Not much.
Customs Border Protection is the same. Really, you know, the tugs, if I remember correctly, were different companies, but basically the same process. The harbor pilots, it is two different pilot associations, but pretty much smooth working between either of them. The services for the ships are really the same across the port. It's really, you know, in kind of name only, and I'm sure it has to do with, you know, port jurisdiction and you know, that kind of thing. But as far as the day-to-day ship operations, I don't recall there being really any difference.
Gotcha. One thing you just mentioned that I think is good for our seniors to hear. So not having a position lined up upon graduation, which I mean, I was just talking to a senior the other day, and kind of it's like the first time in their life that they didn't know what that next step was. So kind of how did you deal with that? Because I mean, I remember when I graduated, it was kind of the same thing, and it was like can be pretty unsettling for sure. So how are you kind of dealing with that process in those months intervening before you started with?
Absolutely, that's a great question. I remember feeling like I had just jumped off a cliff. I remember thinking that thought because you know, everything's going great through high school. You get to Maritime Academy, everything's going great there. I had an outstanding time there, and you know, you get in the mindset that you're succeeding in life, and it's going to keep going well. And then all of a sudden, you fall off that cliff. You're graduated, and I didn't have a job offer at that time. So how did I deal with that? I woke up at 4 or 5 every morning, and worked on job applications for an hour or two before going. I was working with my dad for a couple months. And then basically just working out in the evenings, and you know, doing some other stuff. So yeah, I would wake up early and literally submit job applications for the first hour or two. I don't remember how many companies I applied to. I remember I applied to, I think, Maersk in South Africa. They had a position there. I was all over.
More than you can count, more than you could remember.
Yeah, but just firing those off. You know, some of them turned into, you know, email responses. A couple of them turned into phone interviews. Nothing panned out. And yeah, that was tough. That was discouraging, but you just stick with it. Keep applying, and eventually something pops up. You know, reaching back out to the Maritime Academy, talking to Eric was what actually ultimately ended up with the job offer of Norton Lilly.
Yeah, I know you apply for all those different spots, and then it's the network that you have that is the one that ends up pulling through.
Exactly.
So cool. Okay, so now, I mean, we touched on it a little bit earlier, and what you're doing now. with the Navy and having kind of almost being like a jack of all trades, learning a bunch of different things. What led you to majoring in global studies and maritime affairs at Cal Maritime? And then what benefits have you seen now working at Norton Lilly, working in the Navy from that?
Yeah. So initially I was actually going to be a deckhand. That was when I first.
I was going to ask, like, did you plan on sailing before? Because it sounds like you wanted to, and now you're doing it. But
so I kind of had mixed feelings about sailing. Initially, I picked the school, not the major. So I picked the school, and I knew I wanted to go. There was no doubt in my mind that was where I wanted to go. I wanted to play sports there. I wanted to be involved in the Corps of Cadets. I wanted to do all those things. So I looked at the majors, and the marine transportation stuff looked awesome. Ultimately, decided not to do that and go the global studies route. I think it was, the sailing part interested me, but I've always been interested in bigger picture things, and the global studies major essentially offered a very large overview of the maritime industry, global affairs related to the maritime world, global security. So it was kind of that big picture rather than, I don't want to say getting pigeonholed in a specific job, but the marine transport.
But kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very specific.
Yep.
You want to get to sail ships. And folks absolutely use that major to sail ships and go on to do other things. But I kind of had a sense that I wanted to get that big picture off the bat. What that's done for me in my two maritime related jobs is it's given me an understanding of a bigger picture of what I'm actually doing. As far as hard skills, I walked out of global studies, and I remember there were maybe a handful of things I learned from my major that I actually used as a shipping agent. And there's only a handful of things I used for my major as a naval officer sailing. But in both of those jobs, I've basically had a knowledge of the maritime industry, understood kind of the ins and outs of what I'm doing and how that fits into the bigger picture of the maritime world. Yeah, I loved it. I wouldn't change anything. I would do that major again if I went back there.
Gotcha. And then with your internship for GSMA, who'd you intern with? Kind of how did you pick that company or organization? And then how did that specifically kind of help with your overall professional development? Yeah.
I interned with the Central California Intelligence Center, which was, I'm trying to think how that happened. I was interested in maritime security. That was my initial interest in the maritime world. So that's what I wanted to do an internship in. I applied to a couple federal law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies to do an internship. And ultimately it was the Central California Intelligence Center, which, if I remember correctly, one of the folks that worked there had a son that was a Cal Maritime grad. So there was that networking aspect, and the global studies department, I think, had some connections with him. So they sent a couple of us over. One of the guys I interned with is still working in the California area doing maritime security stuff, which is awesome. And it was a great experience. But what that's tied into is that was my very first work experience. I got to see the maritime security aspect. And since then, I've been able to see the maritime, the shoreside business aspect, and now the maritime sailing aspect. So it's been awesome kind of seeing the range there.
Gotcha. Nice. Another thing I noticed on your LinkedIn account is that you studied Egyptian, or not Egyptian, but you studied colloquial Arabic and got a certificate for that. So where did that kind of come about, and how did you kind of pursue that, and how has it helped you? Has it helped you in your career, or what?
Yeah. It is not the hard skill of knowing Arabic, which, to be honest, I've forgotten a lot of it. Has not. But that life experience has. That was a very challenging experience to pack my bags and go over to Egypt on my own as a junior. I guess it was between my junior and senior year. So that life experience was a great thing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend someone do that, but for me, it was a good thing. The reason I did that was, like I said, at the time, I was very interested in maritime security. So I thought, Arabic would be a good thing to study. Getting some travel experience would be a good thing. I'd already done my trip with the school, but I'd gone to Europe, which was probably the best 2 weeks of my life to date. but it wasn't a culture shock. And so that's really what I was looking for in this trip. Egypt had always interested me, historical reasons, cultural reasons. So that's why I picked that. And then also the Arabic, skill set. What I'd recommend to folks now, though, is if you're interested in maritime security, learn Chinese, learn Mandarin.
Gotcha.
That's kind of the shift going now. But I like I said, I had a great experience.
Cool. Still at Cal Maritime, what is something or some things you found yourself kind of worrying about when you were there that you found kind of largely inconsequential now? Like, I didn't need to worry about that. And then on the flip side, what are kind of something or some things you wish that you had paid maybe a little bit more attention to or worried a little bit more about while you were at Cal Maritime?
Yeah. I can tell you for the second part of that question, there was literally nothing that I didn't go hard and focus on. And that's, I guess, my regret. I didn't have as much fun as I could have at the Maritime Academy. There's so much the school offers, and I took full advantage of that, from Corps of Cadets to being an RHO to doing well academically, being involved in school projects, playing athletics. I did everything I could. And I got the full benefit of going to Cal Maritime and everything that school has to offer, and that is awesome. I also worked myself to the ground. So I was just so worn out the whole time. And you can't forget that you're in college, you're hanging out with a bunch of your best friends, a bunch of like great gals and guys that are interested in the same things. You're in the Bay Area, which is a beautiful place. There's a lot of things, I don't know how it is with COVID now, but there's a lot of opportunities to do fun stuff there. So it's a balance. And I'm not discouraging folks from working hard, get good grades, do things that are meaningful, but it's a balance and find time to have fun enjoying the college experience. So, and I didn't do that. I still had fun, but it was, I look back and I kind of question why I thought it was so important to stay up all night versus maybe fall full of steam.
Yeah, no, you're not the only person that I've talked to, that alum that has said kind of the same thing, that and I know, like, with Cal Maritime, how demanding it is, and like you said, like how much there is to do. It can be easy to get caught up kind of in I gotta do. So yeah, I think it's good for the students to hear that from alums, of like, it's okay to maybe stop and smell the roses sometimes. And
exactly. Yeah, that's to date one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever been on. That is, it's a great place.
Yeah, no, I remember when because I was from the Bay Area, I'd never really heard about the school, didn't know where it was. And so when I went and interviewed for the position, and I'm like, oh wait, we're like right on the water. And I ended up, like, before my interview, taking a walk just on the path there. And now when we were normally on campus, I would almost every day go just take a walk on the water, because it's so peaceful, so beautiful, for sure. So back again, kind of thinking about your jobs, what is one thing, or you can say more than one thing, that you liked about Norton Lilly? And also now with your work in the Navy, what is one thing or a couple things that you really enjoy?
With Norton Lilly, the biggest factor was just the tempo. The fast-paced lifestyle was an absolute blast. And for me, I was 22, 23 at the time. I didn't have a serious relationship, but I was, dating. But it just that fast-paced lifestyle of work. You're problem solving. There's always a problem when you're shipping agent. There's always an email or a phone call. You're on your phone constantly. You'd be hanging out with friends and you would be coordinating tugs, or you'd be, at church and you'd be on the phone with the refueling folks. Non-stop work tempo. And I guess for some folks, I might burn them out at some point in their career, but for me right out of college, that was exactly what I was looking for. I had an absolute blast. So the tempo and coordinating, problem solving. Now that I'm in the Navy, there's a little less problem solving. The Navy is so procedurally ingrained. They've got procedures for everything. They've got references for everything. And I miss the problem solving aspect. There's generally kind of a way to do things. But the trick is finding where are the tools, the references to find the way to do things. So I miss that problem solving aspect. I think the biggest benefit from being in the military is the people, the camaraderie, which is something you get at Cal Maritime, and I'd say it's really similar. Now, having been at Cal Maritime and now being active duty, it's the same feeling, it's the same experience of being around like-minded individuals, working on projects, doing stuff together. You get that on sports teams too. And so I'm lucky to still be living that, and that's not a thing of the past for me. And I'm still working with small teams of individuals that I respect and get along with, and then even when you're not at work, you're still hanging out with those same guys and gals.
Yeah.
It's those are the friends that you hang out with and do things with. So that camaraderie is the single best thing about the military.
Nice. Okay, so now then on the flip side, what is at both Norton Lilly and now in the Navy something that you found challenging? If you want to go to maybe something that you didn't like about them, but yeah, what along those lines?
Kind of along the same lines of the work tempo for Norton Lilly. Being a shipping agent is very demanding. So for me, it was great. I don't have anything negative for me personally, but if you have a family or you just didn't want to work those kinds of hours, that might not be the job for you. There's a lot of really demanding jobs in the maritime industry. Sailing's very demanding. Shoreside jobs are very demanding. It's just a fast-paced industry.
Yeah. And
it's going to require long hours and weird hours too. But you see that in multiple different industries, but the maritime industry is very demanding. So I would say just be aware of that if you're trying to get into the shipping agency kind of line of work. And kind of along the same lines with being active duty, for me it's great, but you're gone a lot. So again, if you have a family or other obligations that you're not able to push to the side to support your job, you might want to think about that. Last year, 2020, between the workup and the deployment, we were gone for I want to say over 9.5 months. Yeah, about 8.5, 9 months.
Gotcha.
And that's in addition to just when you're in port, you're still working a normal day, and you have duty every 6 days. So sometimes it's weekends. That's just a lot of time gone. That's a lot of time working. So it's just demanding.
Yeah. No, and I think you make a good point that you kind of, as you go along, you're figuring out kind of maybe at a certain point in your life, it's okay to be fast paced and demanding. And as you get older and other responsibilities, always kind of weighing what's most important and how to fit everything in, for sure.
Well said.
Definitely. What advice just overall then would you give to cadets kind of looking maybe at either career path that you kind of went on? So whether it be with shipping agent and kind of progressing shoreside like that, or looking into the Navy, whether it be right out of college or a year or two down the line.
Yeah, if you're interested in, I guess, getting in the shoreside commercial maritime world, networking is probably the single biggest thing. Keeping in touch with former maritime grads, your buddies. You'd be surprised that that's where jobs come from. So keeping in touch with those folks, and then even when you get a job, still, it's always doing the best job possible where you're at, but never burn bridges, and always keep in touch with everybody else, because you might get a phone call and they say, hey, this new opening popped up, this other organization, this kind of pay scale, so that networking aspect is critical for the commercial.
It never stops. Networking doesn't stop even if you got a job.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would encourage folks to do a good job at that. For the military, it depends on what you want to do in the military. So I can really only speak for being active duty Navy officer, service warfare, rescue swimmer. If you want to be get involved in something like rescue swimming, or really anything that requires a little extra physicality, make sure you stay in shape. That was something that I played sports at Cal Maritime. I wasn't a 4-year guy for any one sport, but I kind of tinkered in a couple different ones. But athletics and working out have always been a huge priority for me. And even when I was with Norton Lilly, I was still working out. So when I showed up, it wasn't even on my radar. When I showed up to my command after training and OCS, literally day one, they're like, I took some tests and kind of did pretty well at it, and so that immediately opened the opportunity to go through that training. So if you want to get in the military and do something physical, it's really simple. Stay in good shape. Swim, lift. No matter I'm 26 now, and I'm stronger, faster than I ever have been. So
Prime of your physical life right now.
Absolutely. It's only going to get better.
Yeah. I'm a little older than you, and I'd be like, man, at this point, might be a little bit debating if it's getting any better for me.
But so that's kind of the point I'm making is, if you kind of fall off the wagon, it's hard to get back on.
Definitely.
And so maintaining a high level of fitness, if there's a job that you think that at some point will require that, just maintaining it, staying in good shape your whole life is really important. And then for the, in general, the officer side just requires a 4-year degree. But what you can do as a cadet is certainly get involved in any leadership position. I'm not going to say the core cadets or associate students or housing or athletics, like anyone's the best. I did, housing, core cadets, and sports. Just get involved in something that requires teamwork, get involved in something that requires you to step up and be a leader, be an example, work with other people. Those are the things that will benefit you if you become a military officer down the road, because those are things you do on a daily basis. Work with small teams, work with big teams, problem solve to some degree, and lead.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I've actually been helping a couple students with their going through the MARGRAD process with the Coast Guard, and same thing is a lot of leadership questions on there, and whether it be how did you handle past situations or looking to the future, how would you handle X, Y, or Z situation? And kind of the only way you ultimately know how to do that is I've done leadership things, when I was in college. So good. Yeah. Good advice. Well, that's all the questions that I have. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
I don't. If anyone would like to reach out to me, I know you're going to provide the contact information. But I'd be happy to chat with anyone if they have any questions.
Cool. Well, and like you just said, students, his email will be in the notes. So just you want to reach out to Elijah, definitely shoot him an email and get your questions answered. Because like you said, networking is the key. So even if you don't know what you want to do and you just want to learn more about something, lots of jobs out there that you're not going to know about, and you won't know until you talk to somebody that's done them. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're interested in anything he's done.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for talking with us.